The contents of this report is for informational purposes only. You should not construe any such information or other material as legal, tax, investment, financial, or other advice. Wednesday, March 30th, 2022, Maneco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Tom Larsen. He's the CEO of Eloro Resources. Eloro is a publicly traded exploration and mine development company focused on developing its potential world-class Iska Iska silver tin polymetallic property in the Potosi Department of southern Bolivia. Tom, it's really great to speak with you. We spoke a few years ago, probably back in 2018, about Eloro Resources. You sponsored one of my videos, and your company has shifted quite a bit, and you now have a really interesting project, in my opinion, in Bolivia. And we spoke last week, and you told me about it, and I thought, well, this could be the next rich mountain, or Cerro Rico, as the Spanish call it. So without further delay, Tom, welcome to the channel. And yeah, what do you think about this comparison to, you know, the present Iska Iska project and the Cerro Rico?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me on your show, Mario. It's always a pleasure seeing you and having a discussion with you. This is our second official discussion, and yeah, I'm very pleased to be able to explain my thoughts on, you know, where the company is, where it's going, on the comparison of Cerro Rico in relation to our project Iska Iska. Maybe your audience might know a little bit about Cerro Rico, only in that it was deemed as the largest silver tin discovery back in the 16th century. It basically, the silver that was extracted artisanally from that, what they call rich hill, Cerro Rico in Spanish, it basically underwrote the Spanish Armada. The Potosi coins were worldwide, used for trade for generations. So it really put southern Bolivia on the map, especially when it came to silver deposits. But Cerro Rico is again deemed as probably the largest silver mine in the world ever discovered. In our case, I mean, I'm not going to say that Iska Iska is the largest silver mine discovered since Cerro Rico. It's way too early. However, we're very, very pleased. It's sort of, there are definite similarities, there's no question. Cerro Rico is about 200 kilometers, 180 kilometers north of us. It's in the Department of Potosi, and that's one of the southernmost departments in southern Bolivia, up on the Cordillera of the Andes in Bolivia. It's along the tin belt that runs up into southeast Peru. We're also on the tin belt, but we're 180 kilometers south, small town called Tupiza. But Cerro Rico, they were basically a volcanic edifice, a volcanic structure, which is similar to the Iska Iska system, where we have a volcanic system within our 9.5 square kilometer property that's privately owned, which is a positive, and it basically contains a collapsed volcano, a collapsed caldera within a volcano. So that's where and both deposits, in our case, it's early days, but we're coming up with very good silver credits and also tin. as did the Cerro Rico. Cerro Rico was primarily silver, but yes, there has been tin extraction as well, both averaging about 0.2%. In today's terms, 0.2% tin per ton of rock or ton of ore equates to 4 pounds of tin per ton of ore. Tin currently is trading at around $19–20 a pound, or just over $40,000 a ton US. There's been a major increase in the price of tin. It's a very small market. 300,000 tons of tin is produced annually worldwide, and 30% of that would be from China that keeps their tin. Myanmar, another original source. These are higher grade, higher tin values, but much less volume than what we're starting to see and what we believe our mining model will be at Iska Iska. There is a producing tin mine just northwest of us in the southeastern part of Peru, called the San Rafael, owned by Minsur, which is, they produce out of that 300,000 ton number, they probably produce around 20,000 tons, in that range. Bolivia only produces about 14,000 tons of tin concentrates a year, and they have 2 smelters that are underutilized because it just shows the lack of exploration and production in regard to this very tight tin market, hence the the scarcity and hence the dynamics, the positive dynamics that are taking place in the tin market today. So we, we're very, very pleased that we're coming up with tin credits along with our silver, zinc, lead, an array of metals that we're seeing from the drill bit currently.
Question of politics and political stability comes up, so maybe you could cover that a little bit for.
It's early days for us, but the word is getting out. I mean, we participate in some of these mining conferences virtually, and we have talked to some seniors, some large balance sheets, but at an early stage level, because remember, this property had never been drilled. It had never been explored. It was totally basically a preserved, the system's basically been preserved. And I'll get into the politics, but this is important to understand. This property came to us through Dr. Osvaldo Arce, who was the president of the Bolivian Chamber of Commerce, Mining Chamber of Commerce, Bolivian Mining Society. And he has, born and raised, educated in Bolivia, actually got his doctorate in Tokyo, but as always, the Bolivian people are very nationalistic and very proud, a small country. And he has basically he's written 2 volumes on metallogenic deposits. In fact, I have one right here. I don't know if your audience will see it, but this is one of Dr. Osvaldo's books.
If you hold it this way, yeah, right there, yeah, good.
That background is the Cerro Rico deposit. It's a big, massive mountain, basically, that's been mined down. Similar to sort of what we have at Iska Iska. Anyway, through Dr. Osvaldo Arce and his relationships, we had been toiling away in in Peru, always having issues trying to get permitting drilling. When I last talked to you in 2017, that was our focus. And, it's really been tough getting the community on side with a drilling program on our 90 square kilometer property in Peru, to the point that in 2019, Dr. Osvaldo Arce, his father actually was the national manager of Comabol, the state-run mining arm to the Bolivian government, so very plugged in. He had worked on our property, Osvaldo, in Peru, and I saw this great success from a company called New Pacific Metals. It trades on the TSXV. Now it's on New York, but it got up to $1 billion market cap based on this project that they had about 150 kilometers away from Iska Iska called Silver Sands. And the banks and brokerage firms and a lot of funds in Canada and London, England became involved, ended up on the shareholder roster. And that really intrigued me because I always found Bolivia being somewhat of a closed sort of society from the standpoint of allowing a flow of foreign investment in. You'd always heard stories about this Evo Morales character, the former union boss of the cocoa business, and cocoa leaves at least in Bolivia, in the eastern side, well away from the mining Cordillera in the southern part of Bolivia, up to the up its west side into southeast Peru. And I'd also heard some stories that there were certain properties, companies that were expropriated. But when you dig in and find out really what takes place and what took place, some of these companies that had properties taken really weren't, I wouldn't say, weren't conscientious from the standpoint of working properly within the system and with the people, the social license that's so important. Because when you delve into Bolivia, you'll see that companies such as Sumitomo, a very large trading company out of Japan that ended up taking over the San Cristobal deposit, which is 200 kilometers away from us. They spent $1.8 billion putting that thing into a bulk tonnage open pit mining operation. And that was back in 2008. And, they've been a large taxpayer to the Bolivian government, but it's been one of their most profitable assets. And, that's a 370 million ton deposit, silver, lead, zinc, no tin, they're not on the tin belt. But they've been able to work very well, regardless of Evo Morales, or now today with the new president, Luis Arce, from the same party, the MAS party, which is a nationalistic, a little socialistic, but more of a nationalistic party, who was the former finance minister to Evo Morales, Luis Arce. He was educated University of Warwick in England in finance. He understands foreign investment, and they brought a lot of foreign investment in the natural gas sector for a few years. Mining has now taken over at least 30% of their exports, and GNP contributor. They've done away with VAT tax on imported equipment coming into the country. They're looking for ways to attract foreign investment. And since we've been involved, we got involved back in 2019, 2020 on Iska Iska. There's probably 5, 6 other publicly traded companies that are very active currently in southern Bolivia. And that's where the main opportunities lie. Social license is all important. As long as social license is dealt with, you're not creating issues at the community level. There's no reason why you can't mine. Pan American Silver's been mining the San Vicente silver deposit 40 kilometers away from Iska Iska for many years now. By the way, a sidebar, that's where Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid are buried. So if you ever saw that movie.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it's a small country. One of the great benefits that we have at Iska Iska is, first of all, there's been no legacy issues. It was never owned by, the state, like through Comabol or cooperatives, because it was never mined. And the reason it was never mined was everything on surface and around was leached out. There was no sort of easy mining adits into the side and coming up with, wide veined, long veined silver, zinc type of structures. There's I'll try and keep it really simple. The reason it was never, because everything was leached out, there was a reason. Many years ago, like 250 million years ago, this whole area was basically sandstones and sediments, and when things, as time passed on, the Miocene time, which was about 15 million years ago. That's when all the volcanism activity took place. And that's where it shot through the magmas and the pressures from the combinations of gas and water erupted, creating major volcanic edifices, structures, and then everything cooled down and then collapsed calderas over millions of years. But that's where it all developed. In our case, and then there was glaciation that would take a lot of the tops of these things like Cerro Rico, and there was exposed silver and other metals that could be mined artisanally. But in our case, the sediments that we had quartz, a lot of quartz, which is erosionally resistant. It doesn't erode. And this was a blanket on top of this particular volcanic edifice that we call Iska Iska. Also, there was a lot of silicification that came from some what they call epithermal activity later on. So it was basically caked, and everything was oxidized from the the glaciation and such that took place, but it wasn't eroded. So that's why you never saw really anything on surface, and that's why it was never mined. Now, there were some colonial adits, 5 or 6 of them, but the owners, the Villegas family that took over this property in 2012, that was sort of the work they did. They basically rehabbed one of the adits, created 300 meters of access, and we're able to mine a little bit of silver, but it became discontinuous. But there was lots of minerals in what they call the wall rock by these veins, and that's when they actually hired Dr. Osvaldo Arce in 2016 to come and take a look at how they might be able to mine this thing or whether it was worthwhile. So Osvaldo did his report and realized this could be a huge bulk tonnage type thing, but again, very little exploration had been done, just a little bit of geochem, which really came up with very little. But in the adits, you could take channel samples. So they saw the abundance of metals, but to mine it from an artisanal standpoint would have been rather difficult. So he tucked that away. And then after when I saw New Pacific Metals, how well they were doing in Bolivia, I talked to Dr. Bill Pearson, our VP, Executive VP Exploration, and who has a very good relationship with Osvaldo, and the rest is history. We hired Osvaldo. He knew the family. It took us a while to do a commercial deal, and we completed that deal in January of 2020, just before the COVID set in. But we were able to get an independent mining engineer down to do a report for the exchange to allow us to raise money for this from the public for this project. And that commenced in January of 2020. We have to pay 10 million US to acquire a 99% interest. We have 4 years to do that. We've been so happy with the drill results to date that we made a $3 million US payment. So we're left with 7 million US. The Osvaldo family have a construction company. They have a big center in Tupiza where all of our core, and we have over 15 Bolivian geologists and technical peoples on staff working under Dr. Osvaldo Arce. And the drill crew is on site. They have a camp on site with Duke Drilling again from Bolivia. 4 drills are currently going. We've drilled over, I'd say 55,000 meters since we started the inaugural drill campaign in September of 2020. And we've drilled probably 85 holes, and we should come out with our first mineral resource study probably early summer. And that'll give you an outline of the initial resource estimate on one of the areas that we're primarily focused in on right now, higher up in the system, Santa Barbara. But there's lots of other targets that we're encountering at this stage.
Yeah, and maybe you could explain quickly to the viewers, because I get a lot of questions about what kind of mining companies people should invest in, and maybe you could explain what the junior exploration company does, I mean, I view it as someone who goes with a metal detector to try to find the metals, so to speak, and then takes the risk. And then the big companies, they don't do much exploration, and then they acquire the junior exploration.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing this. I've been involved in the resource sector here, the exploration resource sector for quite a long time. In fact, Dr. Bill Pearson and I were together back in the 90s, just before BRIEX, which was a big fiasco. I'm sure some of your audience remembers BRIEX, but we were down in South America, back in Colombia and Ecuador and Panama, looking for properties, and things went nowhere for us back then, but it was interesting back 95, 96, 97. The idea is, from our standpoint, how we look at things, we like to try and find something that could be big enough to attract a major builder. Time is your enemy. If you're dealing with a public company, obviously time can dilute your shares the longer things drag on. So you really want to try and find something, if you're going to do this through a public vehicle, that's something that has some pretty big upside, and it's accessible, and it fits the boxes, like you don't have communities on top of the property and things like that. So I mean, that's basically, so you have people like Dr. Bill Pearson, Dr. Osvaldo Arce. We also have a fellow called Dr. Quentin Hennig, who actually brought the first major fund into Eloro before we started our drilling. The Crescat Capital out of Colorado, they came in, they put $1.5 million in. We've since raised over 30 million at higher share prices, and that because of the success we've been getting from our drilling. But bottom line is, you're out there. It's almost like wildcatting, but you have tools. You have like geochemical studies. You have, in our case, because everything was leached out, geochem is more to do with surface mapping, sampling. We use geophysics, which is more of magnetic inverse models that can basically highlight magnetic bodies that can, and structural, that can, if they're associated, like in our case, pegmatites associated with a magnetic anomaly that's, in our case, pyrrhotite, not pegmatite, pyrrhotite, which in turn is associated with tin, for instance. There's different sort of technologies that assist the exploration geologist. So I try and find the best exploration geologists, those that have not only the knowledge, but the network. And because it's not just trying to find, it's geopolitical and how it works in a country like Bolivia. And Bolivia, remember, is very underexplored. So we're basically, we don't want to really put this type of deposit, you can't just put into production. It's going to be a big bulk tonnage type operation in most cases. So you want to set it up. You want to create a resource with your drilling, showing up that it's economic, that it could be mined, and then you go to a PEA, a preliminary economic assessment study. And then from there, you take it to, with more infill drilling, you take it to a pre-feasibility study, which is actually showing actual costs in actual mining. And in our case, we have many different metals. So metallurgy is a very important aspect to our deposit, how to separate, how to create concentrates. So that's a study that'll be in, for instance, in our first pass MRE, mineral resource estimate. They call it a 43101 inferred indicated mineral resource study that has to be vetted by the exchange and such. So that's being, as we speak, that's being looked after right now. So you'll see. We just had a first research report that was sent out 2 days ago by a company called Cantor Fitzgerald, which is a large investment banking outfit, brokerage firm out of the US and in Canada. And they just came out with the first research report on Eloro resources based on the Iska Iska dynamics. So we're starting to get enough information for the analysts to start interpreting their models and how this thing, could evolve.
Yeah, the other question I wanted to ask you is about silver, because it looks like potentially it could be a good silver property. And with silver prices compared to other commodities in the last 18 months being so undervalued, you told me when we spoke last week that it wouldn't even matter if silver stayed here. The prospects for Iska Iska are really good, even with silver at $25.
Yeah. So yeah, we base our modeling, like the economic modeling, and it's a forecast, but we base it on the Sumitomo San Cristobal bulk tonnage deposit. They're running 50,000 tons a day. It's a big mass, and their average grade of silver per ton of that 50,000 ton a day is anywhere from like 30 to 50 grams. So, that's equivalent to about an ounce and a quarter, ounce and a half of silver per ton. They also have zinc and lead, but the zinc's only 1% per ton and lead's just under 1%, maybe 1.2% zinc. But they make enough cash flow from those lower grades to create, big money. I mean, they're one of the largest silver byproduct operations in the world. So it just shows you the size of these things. And they have 375 million tons. Well, in our case, we're outlining from the drilling that I mentioned, our first pass MRE, we're using basically a volumetric, like the strike length, everything's regionally north, southeast, northwest. And our strike length is around 1,400 meters. And that's still open. Our depth right now that we've been drilling into, like almost envision a cubular type thing, is around 600 meters, and our width is about 500 meters. And then volumetrically, you with the type of density of material, in our case, you multiply that by 2.8 specific gravity, and that works out to over 1 billion tons of material just in that one area, that subset of our volcanic edifice higher up in the system. In that, you've got silver, lead, zinc, and some tin. You get more tin as you get deeper down towards what we believe is a tin porphyry. But the silver probably, if we can average 30 to 40 gram silver, and we can outline, okay, 1 billion tons, and rule of thumb, if you can get 30%, 40% of that is economic, like your combined metal value is over $100. Remember, I'm basing it on $50 a ton on a bulk tonnage operation at San Cristobal. So you're showing a profit. And let's say out of that, so let's say that's 400 million tons that you can sort of initially outline in your MRE. If you're getting 30 grams, even 30 grams, 32 grams silver equivalent in that mix of metals, I mean, that's 400 or 500 million ounces of silver. So that's, for a big down the road, bigger CapEx to get all this into production and moving forward, that's the type of thing that, like a large balance sheet, like a large company, like a BHP or a Rio, or, maybe POSCO or the groups in the Far East. That's the type of thing they want to see. They want to see a 40, 50-year mine life with big production. That means you need a big system, a big deposit. And that's sort of what we're sort of trying to illustrate. And so far, so good. But, again, Mario, it's early days.
Yes, Tom, thank you very much for your time. Before we finish, could you tell the viewers where Eloro is listed and the ticker symbols?
Yeah, so we're on the TSX venture. The symbol is ELO. ELO on the TSX venture. Once the mineral resource comes out, though, we'll move it to the TSX, the higher exchange, but the TSXV. We're also on the OTC, over-the-counter QX market in the United States under the symbol ELRRF. And there's a listing on the Frankfurt that the way they list, I can't give you the exact, it's a number quote.
So the prospects look very interesting, of course, but again, it's like you said,
Yeah,
nothing.
It's early days.
It's early
It's very
days.
speculative.
Yeah.
You have to be very careful. Do your homework. We have about 63 million shares outstanding, fully diluted. We have around 77 million. We have about 10 million Canadian in the bank. We burn at about $1 million to $1.2 million US a month for the drilling. All in's around $250 a meter. Management owner, I mean, we have probably close to 28 million of the 63 million outstanding amongst, people that are close to us, like different funds that we know and management and such. So it's, the structure of the company, the trading structure, it's very tight, which I've always I prefer a company with a smaller amount of shares than these 400 million share outstanding companies that still have to raise a lot of money, to get things into operation and get things taken out. So I find, that's sort of my background a bit. I've always enjoyed putting together a good resource structure, a company structure to leverage on a hopeful discovery.
Great. Thank you very much, Tom. I wish you and Eloro Resources the best of luck in the future, and hopefully we'll speak again.
Mario, thanks a lot for having me. Pleasure seeing you again.